As we've mentioned, Joe Biden chose not to travel to Wisconsin ahead of President Trump's planned visit there Tuesday. Instead, he took his message to another battleground state. He told people in Pennsylvania President Trump is trying to scare America.
You know my heart. You know my story, my family story. Ask yourself, do I look like a radical socialist with a soft spot for rioters? Really? I want a safe America, safe from COVID, safe from crime and looting, safe from racially motivated violence, safe from bad cops. Let me be crystal clear, safe from 4 more years of Donald Trump.
For more, let's bring in Natasha Korecki. She is a national correspondent for Politico based in Illinois. Hi there, Natasha. So Joe Biden also said that rioting and vandalism deserve prosecution. You recently reported from Kenosha, Wisconsin. What did people tell you? Is that the kind of message Democrats there want to hear from Biden when it comes to recent protests?
Yes, it was absolutely the predominant message that I was hearing from residents of Kenosha. They wanted, first and foremost, for the rioting to stop, for the violence to stop. You know, we saw lots of images of what was happening in Kenosha, fires, people in the street armed, blowing past curfew. And then, ultimately, last Tuesday night, 2 people shot and murdered. So, yes, that is what we heard from Democrats. And quite frankly, initially, a lot of the Democrats locally in Kenosha were concerned about how their local government and their state government was responding. They thought that Trump was shouting down Governor Evers. They thought that Trump was coming out as being, because he is self-proclaiming to be the law and order president. A lot of people don't know the facts, which was Governor Evers did actually call out the National Guard before Trump did. So it was just sort of some of the handling of it. Democrats, primarily those who live there, and also ones who are concerned about Wisconsin as a swing state and looking at a lot of the swing voters in the state, worried that these images of violence from Kenosha was going to turn them away.
So then, Natasha, with that dynamic developing, how has the Biden campaign been forced to switch gears in the wake of what's been happening in Kenosha?
Right. Well, so Biden last week, there was a lot of pressure for him to speak up and to address the violence, to make clear that he believes there's systemic racism in police departments and how the shootings take place. He condemned the shooting. He called the Blake family. But at the same time, he also condemned the violence. He stated today more clearly than ever that he did not support the violence. And I thought the clip you just showed was, very poignant moment today, where he is, flat out saying, "Do I look like a radical to you?" And say what you will about Joe Biden, I don't think he looks like a radical. So I think that his comments today, his speech was very, very compelling. I think it knocks Trump back on his heels on the eve of Trump's visit to Kenosha. He's going tomorrow. The governor of Wisconsin has asked Trump not to go. He's still going. So it's just a new dynamic in this race, and both sides are really revving up. Yes, Biden wanted to be holding Trump's feet to the fire on coronavirus. He still did do that today. But he did also have to take a break and address this issue. He had to. He had to defend himself and speak up, and I think he did do that today.
So, Natasha, you mentioned President Trump planning to be in Wisconsin tomorrow. How much emphasis overall is the Biden campaign putting on the state of Wisconsin, and does Joe Biden have plans to visit anytime soon?
Right. Well, that was one of the concerns we heard over the weekend, last week, and even today. When is Biden coming to Wisconsin? He was supposed to go there, of course, for the Democratic National Convention. He ended up switching the speech to Delaware. And there's some people in Wisconsin who are really kind of miffed about this. Couldn't he have done it in a safe way and still sort of paid his respects to the state where the Democratic national nominee in 2016 did not visit during the general election. But his campaign insists he is going. He could be going there as early as later this week. He wants to put some distance between himself and Trump. He wants to be, really show that he has command of this issue. He's not going to be cornered into responding in a way that is dictated by Trump, that he's going to do it his own way. But people in Wisconsin say he should have been there yesterday. He needs to get there right away. He needs to show a presence, and he needs to give basically a lot of love to Wisconsin, which is going to be a pivotal battleground state in November. We know that from almost every map we've looked at.
And Natasha, I know you had sort of anecdotal kind of reports of some voters really being so turned off by the images of the violence. What about specifically these swing suburban voters, which are clearly a target here for President Trump and some of the rhetoric? Is there any evidence, or when you talk to those folks who kind of keep track of this, are they seeing in polling that, for instance, this does resonate with people who might not necessarily be open to a message from Republicans or from the president, but because it's come to places like Kenosha, Wisconsin, because you have, as you reported, small businesses that heretofore seemed very far away from places, like Portland, et cetera. Is there actual data that they're starting to see this kind of line of attack specifically aimed at suburban voters is actually working?
There is some data. I think there's going to be more. But what strategists say, what pollsters say, and just anecdotally what you're hearing is that these images turn off swing voters. They do not want to see this. They do not support businesses being ransacked and looted. They do not want to see the violence. People who live in these communities want the violence to stop. They're horrible scenes. And when you go to Kenosha last week, which I don't live far from and pass all the time, it's like a war zone. It was incredible to see. People do not want that. And Trump was trying desperately to put this on Biden's lap. I think somewhat successfully last week, I think Biden managed to flip the script on Trump today by saying, hey, wait a minute, this is your America right now. You are the president. The other thing I think I should mention is that, yes, suburban and swing voters want the stuff to stop. They do not like it. It's horrible to them. They do not want it to continue. But minority voters, they also want it to stop. But many of them who I've spoken to have said, well, wait a minute. If you're just talking about let's go back to the status quo, and the status quo is policemen are going to be shooting somebody in the back 7 times, I don't want the status quo either. And I think that is a difficulty that Biden is facing because he has to straddle both of those issues. And Trump has basically been ignoring, the Jacob Blake aspect of this and what happened with police. He's seizing on the law and order aspect of the violence, but he's not really addressing, what is simmering below the surface with the Jacob Blake shooting.
Right. We did not hear him, for instance, utter Jacob Blake's name during his address at the Republican convention last Thursday. All right, Natasha Korecki of Politico with a snapshot of Kenosha, Wisconsin right now. Thanks very much, Natasha.
Thank you.